Ben, écoutez, je pense que les Canadiens et les Canadiennes sont pas là. Ce que les gens veulent, vous savez, les préoccupations des gens, c'est le coût de la vie, c'est le logement. Alors, les gens veulent qu'on travaille ici. Les gens nous envoient à Ottawa pour faire un travail. Puis, dans un moment comme celui-là où il y a beaucoup d'enjeux, moi, je vous dirais que je leur suggérais d'écouter les gens. Les gens sont clairs en disant, écoutez, c'est le moment de travailler. C'est pas le moment de regarder, avoir des avantages politiques. C'est le temps de travailler pour les gens. Puis le message là-dessus, il est fort et clair. Les gens disent, écoutez, il y a personne qui souhaite, je pense, qu'il y ait des discussions politiques présentement. Les gens sont plutôt à dire, concentrez-vous sur nos enjeux, puis nos enjeux sont clairs, et les gens l'ont répété, les gens le vivent à toutes les semaines. C'est pour ça qu'on est ici à Ottawa, vous savez.
Mais c'est vous qui avez signé l'entente. Est-ce que vous avez un bout de chemin supplémentaire à faire pour essayer de...
Ben, écoutez, moi, je vous dis, on est toujours là, puis vous savez, la politique, c'est de s'ajuster aussi à ce que les gens ont besoin, ce que les gens veulent. Présentement, la grande priorité des gens, on le sait tous, c'est au niveau du logement, c'est au niveau, par exemple, du coût de la vie, c'est aussi au niveau de bâtir l'économie du 21e siècle. On parle de l'intelligence artificielle, on parle de choses qui vont être importantes, on parle d'investissements importants. Alors moi, je vous dis, les gens là, dans la rue, ça les intéresse pas trop ce qui se passe au niveau d'un parti politique. Les gens disent, travailler pour nous, c'est ce qui est important pour nous.
Have you talked to Roger Shaw about the price hikes? Have you talked to Roger Shaw about the price hikes? The price hikes, cell phones going up, costs going up?
Well, listen, Stats Canada is pretty clear when it comes to cell phone prices. They're going down now. Obviously, there's hundreds of individual plans in the country, so obviously what we need is to make sure that the information is transparent so that people can look at the best deal for them. But the trend is going in the right direction. Obviously, we need to put pressure. You know me, I've always been putting pressure.
Lifted prices by $9.
Well, but you have to look on how many plans. There's hundreds of plans in Canada. So what I'm saying is that the trend is going for lower prices in Canada, but some plans have been going up, and I'm being very clear to them. I said, listen to people. Our objective has always been more competition, lower prices, and reliability of the network. So we're going to keep being on putting policies in place that offer more choice for consumers and make sure that the trend of cell phone price goes down.
Juste pour revenir sur l'entente avec le NPD, est-ce que vous y voyez encore une quelconque utilité à cette entente-là?
Ben, oui, c'est utile, mais c'est utile pour nous, mais c'est utile pour les Canadiens et les Canadiennes parce que ça nous permet de faire avancer. Vous savez, il y a des projets de loi importants qui sont présentement devant le Parlement. Ça me fait penser, par exemple, le projet de loi sur les renseignements personnels, sur l'intelligence artificielle. Des choses importantes. Là, les gens, on parle d'intelligence artificielle. Il y a un article à peu près aux 2 jours dans les journaux. Ça, c'est le genre de choses qu'on doit livrer. On doit livrer pour les gens. C'est pas livrer pour le gouvernement, c'est livrer pour les Canadiens et Canadiennes. Alors moi, j'en appelle au bon sens, à ce qu'on doit faire ici. Les gens, dans un moment comme celui-là, il y a beaucoup d'inquiétudes, il y a de l'incertitude à certains niveaux. Les gens s'attendent à ce qu'on travaille dans la même direction pour faire avancer les choses qui comptent.
Quelle crédibilité accordez-vous à la menace électorale, M. Hussen?
Bon, écoutez, moi, je suis pas dans sa tête, mais je sais ce que les gens nous demandent, puis les gens nous demandent de travailler, d'aller de l'avant, parce qu'il y a des enjeux urgents présentement sur lesquels on doit travailler. Puis je pense que honnêtement, il y aurait avantage à écouter les gens, parce que ce que les gens nous demandent, c'est de faire avancer ces choses-là qui sont très importantes.
Pas d'une élection.
Moi, je pense, j'ai pas entendu une personne à date me parler de ça.
Sur Rive-Can, je voulais juste savoir votre réaction par rapport à tout ce qui est sorti hier.
Ben, c'est inacceptable. C'est très simple.
Pensez-vous qu'il faut creuser un petit peu plus?
Bien, mais c'est exactement le travail qui était en train de se faire. M. Duclos a été clair. Ceux qui ont commis des fautes vont devoir répondre de leurs actes. Je veux dire, c'est clair que c'est inacceptable. Voyons, les gens comprennent bien. C'est inacceptable et ceux qui ont commis des actes devront répondre de leurs actes. Puis c'est pour ça que le ministre Duclos a été très clair avec le ministre Leblanc hier qu'il y a un processus interne qui a été enclenché. Il y a une enquête interne. Puis c'est ce que les gens s'attendent. Il y a personne... tout le monde est clair à dire, écoutez, c'est inacceptable. Maintenant, on va faire on va prendre les mesures appropriées pour identifier ceux qui ont fait ceux qui ont été responsables de donner ces contrats-là.
Avec le...
Parce que c'est vous, oui, mais écoutez, il y a une question de responsabilité ministérielle, mais il y a aussi des individus qui ont posé des actes pour lesquels ils devront répondre. C'est pour ça qu'il y a une enquête présentement à l'interne là-dessus, parce qu'il y a des gens qui ont posé des actes. Et effectivement, ces gens-là devront répondre, et c'est pour ça que on était clair que, clairement, c'est inacceptable, mais maintenant, il faut que ceux qui sont responsables, il y a des gens, là, il y a des gens qui ont donné ces contrats-là, il y a des gens qui ont négocié ces contrats-là, bien, ces gens-là devront répondre de leurs actes.
Pour revenir à l'entente avec les...
Clarify, you're on the economic team. Can your government afford what it promised 2 years ago? Can your government afford a single-payer pharmacare system?
Listen, we're talking to the NDP. We're looking what is possible. But I would also remind everyone what matters to Canadians now. It's really issues around affordability, around housing, building the economy of the 21st century.
To get support from the NDP, though, you agree to pharmacare.
Revenez avec votre entente avec le NPD. Est-ce que dans les discussions, dans la collaboration que vous avez avec vous avez vu un changement, soit une perte de confiance, une perte d'une certaine ligne de communication avec
ben, écoutez, on doit toujours se parler pour être, moi je dirais, en diapason avec les besoins des citoyens et des citoyennes.
Mais dans vos communications avec
on doit toujours travailler ensemble. Vous savez, on a fait de belles choses ensemble. Puis je pense que présentement, il y a encore des choses qu'on peut faire ensemble qui correspondent aux besoins qui sont exprimés par les Canadiens et les Canadiennes. Merci. Merci.
Les permis d'études pour les étudiants internationaux. Bien, maintenant, il y a un gel sur les permis, évidemment, suite à mon annonce il y a 2 semaines.
Il y a beaucoup de cas d'étudiants, par exemple, qui veulent renouveler, qui attendent des mois et des mois. C'est compliqué.
Mais c'est clair que les délais, en général, ont été réduits de façon significative au cours de la dernière année. Là, évidemment, avec ce qui arrive avec les étudiants internationaux, on a un gel sur les émissions de permis jusqu'au 31 mars.
Ça touche les gens qui sont déjà ici?
Ça devrait pas, non. Alors, je sais pas si vous avez des cas précis à moi. Pardon?
Est-ce que 9 mois, c'est raisonnable comme délai?
Mais ça dépend. Il y a toujours des cas qui dérapent pour plusieurs raisons. Quand ça devient systémique, alors c'est clair que c'est un problème. En général, le système marche très bien, mais il y a toujours des cas qui arrivent. Évidemment, durant la COVID, c'est devenu systémique, puis on a pu régler ça. C'est pas parfait aujourd'hui, mais il y a du travail à faire.
Que pensez-vous, M. Miller, de la menace néo-démocrate de ne plus vous soutenir et donc peut-être de précipiter le Canada en élection cette année?
Ben, on est dans une situation minoritaire. Il faut toujours travailler avec les partis. La SACA, c'est quand même un arrangement assez unique. Et il faut travailler avec les partis. J'ai pas plus de réflexion que ça.
Croyez-vous que c'est le temps d'une élection? Y croyez-vous à cette menace?
Ben, en minorité, il faut toujours être prêt à une élection. Sinon, on est assez naïf, merci. Et c'est peu importe le fait qu'on ait une entente avec l'NPD, c'est clair qu'il faut travailler avec eux. Mais s'il y a des demandes qui sont déraisonnables, alors il faut les souligner.
Est-ce que vous allez rencontrer les premiers ministres des provinces et du Québec comme le réclamait, l'exigeait la motion du Bloc qui a été adoptée il y a 100 jours?
Ben, c'est 100 jours. Alors, c'est clair que c'est une motion qui n'est pas contraignante. Le gouvernement n'a pas voté avec la motion. On a voté contre. C'est clair, ceci étant dit, que je prends très au sérieux ce genre de motion. Alors, je vais évidemment y réfléchir. S'il y a lieu de continuer nos conversations avec les provinces quant aux niveaux qui sont acceptables pour un pays comme le Canada, c'est quelque chose que je fais comme réflexion avec plusieurs acteurs au pays, incluant les provinces à chaque année. Si c'est le cas, et s'il serait juste de précipiter cette discussion, je ne serais pas contre, mais j'y réfléchis.
De faire quoi, un sommet, une espèce de sommet?
Mais on pourrait voir ce que je demanderais peut-être aux gens, c'est de venir avec... Il y a beaucoup de gens qui veulent des immigrants de façon temporaire ou permanente au pays. Le travail qu'on a fait dans notre réflexion de révision stratégique du département a tenu en ligne de compte, a consulté des milliers de gens à travers le pays et on est venu à plusieurs conclusions très importantes sur le niveau de coordination qu'on a fait avec les provinces, surtout avec cette notion très mal définie du capacité d'accueil qui prend en ligne de compte plusieurs affaires, mais pas nécessairement le besoin de la même.
Vous avez parlé d'une demande déraisonnable. À quoi
provinces think that you're changing the international student cap. Are you changing the international student cap?
Je vais juste finir ma réflexion. Et finalement, étant donné que j'ai 100 jours pour y réfléchir, je vais le faire. C'est une réflexion que je fais constamment avec mes collègues des provinces. Mais de façon formelle, c'est peut-être une bonne idée. Mais
pourquoi vous avez voté contre d'abord?
Bien, c'est parce que, évidemment, le Bloc a mis ça de l'avant. Ils ont parlé de réviser nos niveaux. On peut croire... Je ne pense pas qu'il y ait quelqu'un au Bloc qui dirait qu'on va réviser à la hausse, plutôt à la basse. Il y avait beaucoup de non-dits. Il n'y avait pas consulté le Québec pour autant. Et pourtant, ce Québec, c'est le porte-parole du Québec, surtout avec l'accord unique qu'on a dans l'accord Québec-Canada. Et voilà que le Bloc se transformait magiquement en porte-parole des autres premiers ministres des provinces pour militer pour ce genre de sommet. Alors, question de procédure, question de faire ça en 100 jours, quand c'est quelque chose qu'on fait de toute façon à chaque année. Alors, le fait qu'on n'ait pas gagné le vote, ça va me faire réfléchir parce que je respecte évidemment la volonté du Parlement.
Minister, are you changing the international student cap from a per capita basis? Some provinces are saying that you are.
Sorry, what's the question? That's not a question.
Are you changing, so it was supposed to be on a per capita basis
Yes,
for
per
international
population.
students. Are you changing the calculation?
What do you mean by changing it? We changed it because there were certain provinces that were abusing it and were way over their per population basis, like
Right.
Ontario and British
Are
Columbia.
you changing it from a per capita basis to a new calculation?
We are changing it to a per capita basis. There are some adjustments that we're willing to make on a number of levels. We're looking at one, the volume proposition, which is excessive given the context, particularly in places like Ontario and British Columbia, but also the quality of it. We have made certain exemptions to masters and PhDs, as well as the K-12 programs, primary and secondary. I'm willing to revise that if that is something that gets out of control as well, but the first target was to target the large volume that's existing in Ontario with respect to...
Still tied to per capita.
What we have proposed, that the first pillar that I announced 2 weeks ago, is tied to the population in countries in order to have an equitable distribution of visas inside the countries, whether it's Quebec, from Quebec to...
À ma question sur les élections tout à l'heure, vous avez parlé de demandes raisonnables. Qu'est-ce que vous voulez dire?
C'est des demandes qui sont faites en privé, dans notre discussion dans le contexte de la SACA. Alors, comme dans toute négociation, il y a certains items qui ne sont pas nécessairement acceptables, il y en a d'autres qui sont peut-être acceptables, mais c'est une conversation qui continue avec le...
Est-ce qu'on est là pour une élection?
Ça peut être très frustrant, mais on a quand même une bonne entente avec l'NPD. On n'est pas du même parti. Alors, il y a parfois des éléments de principe sur lesquels on n'est pas nécessairement en accord avec eux. Mais on est pratique aussi. L'idée, c'est pas d'avoir des gains pour nos partis respectifs, mais pour les Canadiens.
Juste pour Israël, est-ce qu'on sait il y a eu combien d'applications de gens qui voulaient se prévaloir du programme que vous avez mis en place? Puis est-ce que la limite qui était à 1000...
Comme je l'avais dit à Rafi en anglais, j'ai demandé à mon équipe de réviser les paramètres sous l'optique humanitaire qu'on l'a lancé, évidemment sans compromettre la sécurité des gens, des Canadiens, évidemment avec la catastrophe humanitaire qui existe et qui sévit et maintenant qui menace de sévir à Rafah.
Mais est-ce qu'on a des chiffres? Est-ce qu'on sait combien de gens
Si j'ai des chiffres de nombre
prévaloir?
d'applications, oui,
Ouais.
on a des chiffres dans les centaines, oui. Évidemment, ça dépend de l'état de maturité de chaque application. Il y a à peu près une centaine de gens qu'on a mis sur une liste pour pouvoir les sortir parce que l'application est dans un état tel qu'on peut les sortir pour faire le triage secondaire au Caire. Mais c'est une liste qui
En fonction des paramètres qui vont être...
Oui.
OK, juste pour clarifier.
Vous pensez que la menace du NDP va peut-être retirer sa confiance et donc précipiter une élection?
On continue d'avoir des discussions très productives, positives avec nos collègues du parti, du nouveau Parti démocratique.
Mais croyez-vous que c'est une menace?
Écoutez, vous avez l'entente. On a des choses que l'on souhaite conjointement accomplir et nous travaillons là-dessus.
Non, mais il semble pas avoir la même lecture.
Vous craignez-vous une élection?
Moi, je continue de travailler dans le sens de la collaboration et je pense que nos collègues de l'autre côté le font de même.
Mais il semble pas avoir la même lecture. Le NPD ne semble pas avoir la même lecture que vous quant à l'avancée des discussions. Vous parlez de discussions qui progressent, mais le NPD parle plutôt des libéraux qui se traînent les pieds. Donc, êtes-vous assis à la même table, finalement?
Oui, on est assis à la même table et je peux vous affirmer que tant du côté des ministres concernés que de mon côté, quant aux opérations de la Chambre des communes, que les discussions et les pourparlers vont bon train.
Vous n'avez pas l'air stressé, vous n'avez pas l'air stressé, là. Vous n'avez pas l'air stressé, par exemple.
On that pharmacare deal in particular, the NDP seem convinced that your government's not willing to actually put what's on the table, what was expected, aka the single-payer pharmacare system. Is that even affordable within the current fiscal framework for this government? Is that even an option that you can offer right now?
I'm going to let the Minister of Health speak to the substantive issue, but what I can repeat for you is that the discussions between both parties are very healthy, open communication, and
they don't seem to see it that way.
We continue to dialogue positively.
They say that this time is different from other negotiations, that this time they have very little faith that you will deliver. Mm-hmm. So is this deal over at the end of this month?
I believe that we continue to move in positive directions with respect to the supply and confidence agreement. The dialogue continues to be very healthy, very open, and from my perspective, it's been positive.
Est-ce que les sorties du NPD sont politiques, de nature politique, à votre avis?
Moi, je laisse le NPD assumer leurs propos. Moi, j'assume les miens, et pour ma part, les discussions vont dans le
sens. Pensez-vous qu'il y a de la stratégie dans ça?
Pardon?
Pensez-vous qu'il y a de la stratégie dans ça de la part du NPD?
Moi, je ne peux pas spéculer là-dessus.
De votre point de vue de libéral, de whip, est-ce que vous y voyez encore un avantage à cette entente-là, là, en ce moment-là, en 2024, en février? Là?
Moi, je vois un avantage pour les Canadiens. Lorsqu'il y a des messieurs qui viennent au match de hockey me parler de la lettre qu'ils ont reçue pour les soins dentaires et comment ça les soulage, oui, ça supporte mes convictions personnelles que nous sommes à livrer des résultats sur le terrain pour les Canadiens, et c'est ça notre priorité.
Is your party ready for an election?
I'm the government House leader. There are people who are looking after election preparations. You have to be, we're in a minority parliament, you have to be ready at all times.
Did you promise more than you can deliver with this pharmacare part of the NDP deal?
We went into this agreement with our eyes wide open, as did the NDP. And
what does that mean?
Well, that means we negotiated a good deal.
But now you're not delivering on it. Are you able to deliver a universal pharmacare as promised in that deal?
The agreement stands, and we understand our obligations under that agreement.
Thank you.
Oui, M. Singh qui dit si vous ne donnez pas ce qu'on veut, là, on pourrait aller en élection. Croyez-vous?
Bien, ça, c'est la décision de M. Singh. Moi, je suis convaincu qu'on peut s'entendre, comme on s'est entendu sur les soins dentaires.
Do you feel that the NDP are still committed to the supply and confidence deal?
I think so, yeah, I think so, because it's working. And we're demonstrating something extremely rare in our country, is that parties that, are different can work together. And that's rare.
Une élection ce printemps 2024, bonne idée?
C'est de bonne heure?
Je vous demande.
Non, c'est de bonne heure.
Non, je ne tente pas.
Il n'y a personne qui a le goût d'aller à l'élection. Moi, il me semble qu'avec tout ce qu'on a sur la table, sur les choses qu'on doit faire, on vient d'avoir un sommet sur le vol de voiture, on a toutes sortes de projets de loi importants. Il n'y a pas d'appétit, pas chez nous, puis je serais surpris qu'il y en ait dans les autres caucus aussi.
Est-ce qu'il va y avoir une entente?
Moi, je suis très confiant qu'il y en ait une autre.
Oui, mais qu'est-ce qui vous fait dire ça? Le NPD, eux autres, disent que ça va pas bien, vous accusent de faire du niaisage.
Mais je ne peux pas parler pour le NPD, là, mais je peux quand même parler comme membre du comité de suivi de l'entente. Et je vous dirais que de façon générale, les discussions avancent.
Est-ce que le gouvernement a les moyens financiers? Parce qu'à
il n'y aura pas d'entente, on ne signera pas une entente sur quelque chose qu'on n'a pas aimé.
Sur arrive quand? Votre réaction par rapport à ça, le rapport hier, tout ce qui est sorti, il y a 2 fonctionnaires qui ne sont plus à l'emploi.
On a été très clair. Je veux dire, il y a 2 choses. La première, c'est que oui, il fallait réagir extrêmement rapidement dans un contexte difficile et unique. On l'a fait, mais ça n'existe pas le fait qu'il y a des choses qui ne sont pas correctes qui sont passées. Puis s'il y a quelqu'un qui a fait quoi que ce soit qui ne soit pas correct, il payera le prix.
Mais il faut
correctement.
Creuser plus au gouvernement.
J'ai pas ce type de détails-là, mais moi, on va s'assurer, en tout cas, comme gouvernement, c'est que si quelqu'un a fait quelque chose de mal, il va payer.
Minister, you're on the committee with the NDP. Can you just clarify if the deal is at risk? Is your government going to deliver what they've requested on pharmacare, or is the deal ending?
I'm quite confident. It's normal that this type of conversation and comments through the media, but bottom line, we're demonstrating that, 2 parties that not necessarily think the same hours, can work together. And this, honestly, if we go to the end, would be our first in Canada.
But NDP says time is different. They don't believe that you're actually ready to deliver the pharmacare that was agreed to 2 years ago. So is the federal government, the minority Liberals, actually going to deliver a single-payer pharmacare system?
Well, what we agreed in the SACA document is to table a bill, which we're ready to do. We're negotiating the details, and I'm confident they take their decision at the end of the process. But I'm confident we can get agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vous êtes inquiète à une élection du NPD de déchirer l'entente avec votre parti?
Je pense que non, moi j'ai aucune inquiétude là-dessus. On a une entente et moi j'ai beaucoup de confiance. On va être ici jusqu'à 25.
Mais le NPD menace de déchirer cette entente-là en disant que ça va pas bien les négociations pour l'assurance médicaments.
C'est une conversation qui continue à se faire et on a eu des moments où il y avait des menaces dans le passé et on est toujours en fonction. Je pense qu'on va l'être jusqu'à 25.
Pensez-vous que c'est un geste politique de monsieur?
I do not think there will be an election in a few weeks, and we're going to continue to have a conversation. And look, the relationship that we have with the Democrats is an important one, and we will continue to work on priority files. And so that's what we will do, and I fully expect us to be here until 2025. Merci.
Did you promise too much with pharmacare?
Well, we've always approached our to collaborate, deliver for Canadians when the parliamentarians work together from all parties. Canadians benefit, and that has been our approach.
Do you think he will do it?
We'll continue to work very constructively with him and with the NDP caucus to get things done for Canadians.
Do you think it's a realistic threat?
Well, we approach it with a collaborative mindset. We've always done that. We've always heard them out, and if they have concerns about the supply and confidence agreement, we always have channels to discuss those issues.
Minister Hussen, can you give us an update on the UNRWA investigation? We're now seeing the head of UNRWA is refusing to resign. There are reports that Israel hasn't really confirmed the intelligence to back off the claims against UNRWA. What's your position on that?
Well, the investigation is being conducted by the United Nations, and we will wait for that investigation. We hope it is a transparent, comprehensive investigation. These are very troubling and serious allegations, and the prudent thing to do is to put a pause on our funding to UNRWA. We, of course, are not only continuing our support to Palestinian civilians, we've increased our support by $40 million to groups like the World Food Programme and UNICEF and others, and so we'll continue to be there for the Palestinian population who are facing very difficult circumstances now.
Why did you pause the funding without seeing the evidence for yourself?
We were approached by the United Nations itself and with these serious allegations, and the prudent thing to do was to pause pending the results of the investigation.
What do you need to see from the United Nations now in order to restore your
I'm not going to prejudge an investigation, but we hope it will be a transparent, comprehensive investigation. And we were, as I said earlier, we were approached by the UN itself with these very serious, disturbing allegations. And the prudent thing to do is to pause and regroup and see what comes out of this.
So do you want to see the evidence that they come forward with their investigation for yourself, or if the UN says actually everything's fine,
we'll see what the investigation produces. And by the way, we're talking with our partners as well. Yesterday I spoke to my counterpart from Germany on how to approach this and how to coordinate our efforts so that we have confidence in the process and in the result.
Hi, Minister. What are you hoping to accomplish with the King of Jordan visit tomorrow?
We collaborate with Jordan on all sorts of fields. We're a very strong partner with Jordan on water resiliency, on support for refugees. We support Jordan in their education ministry to educate millions of kids. We're working with Jordan to stabilize the region and make sure that Jordan continues to be a viable, stable country. They've stepped up in a big way to host millions of refugees, and we owe it to Jordan to also stand in solidarity with them.
Are you expecting sort of the conflict in the Middle East to come up during the visit tomorrow?
We are always open to exchanging views with our partners on the ground, and Jordan is a key pillar to our Middle East strategy. And I must say, on the Rafah issue, we're very concerned about the situation there, and we are very preoccupied with the plight of the Palestinian civilians in Rafah. They have nowhere to go. These are women and children, any potential military action there could potentially even threaten a 45-year-old peace agreement with Egypt. We want civilians to be protected, and humanitarian law to be respected, and these are women and children. They have nowhere else to go. They were told to go there for safety, and we have to keep their safety in mind.
What do you think it signifies that the King of Jordan is coming here to Canada? Does that mean that the
he's come here before. He has a very good relationship with Prime Minister Trudeau, and Jordan and Canada enjoy a very strong diplomatic and people-to-people ties, and that explains why the King is coming. Thank you.
Monsieur Champagne,
the capacity, and sometimes it's a local shelter system, sometimes it's special facilities that are opened up to provide additional space to keep people safe. So we're going to look to do what we can to advance rapidly solutions on the ground at a community level. In fact, that's why just before the holidays we increased our investments through the Reaching Home program to communities by $100 million in advance of winter setting in, so communities would have a little extra support to deploy solutions where they have them. But the permanent solution, you're absolutely right, will take more time because you can't solve the issue around homelessness and encampments without having an ecosystem that has sufficient affordable housing stock for low-income families. It's one thing to tell a person that they won't be able to remain in an encampment. It's another thing to actually make sure that they have a safe place to go. So we're going to work in the short term to provide supports to communities that are identifying local solutions, but in the long term, the strategy absolutely has to involve supporting communities building out that affordable housing stock.
Do you have any updates on the Indigenous housing program that was announced in last week that we haven't heard anything about since?
So are you referring to the Urban, Rural, and Northern program? Yeah. So we just a little more than a month ago, I'd say, I forget the precise date, shared information that we were going to be moving forward with the strategy, that it will include a branch that directly supports distinctions-based approaches where communities know who their members are that are no longer living in the community, but also a separate portion of the fund that's going to be reserved for community projects that will be run through a center we established nationally. We hope to have this the center identified and selected through an RFP process that should be complete next month. We do have the first tranche of the funding that's being administered by an organization called Nishi. They are now making decisions on that first cohort of applications that have come in. I believe their application process closed in January, and they should be rolling out the first round of projects they'll be supporting very soon. So on the heels of them rolling out that first tranche, we expect to then appoint the National Centre to help administer the balance of the funding, and of course reserve a portion of it for distinctions-based approaches where communities can actually support members of their community who no longer live in the community. This is important. It's a huge opportunity in certain parts of the country and is inextricably linked to some of the challenges that came up in our previous question around homelessness, particularly in larger urban centres, but not exclusively large urban centres.
Also on that question, so speaking especially about that you're speaking about homelessness, and a question has been about youth and youth suicides in the north. I've been linked to homelessness as well. Is there any part of this program that will be addressing youth as part of Indigenous youth?
Yeah, so the answer is yes, but what's important, extremely important, do you mind just holding this for a moment? What's extremely important is that we don't adopt a paternalistic approach with this generational opportunity. We have consciously made a decision, both through our programs designed to build housing in communities and our funding we put on the table to support housing efforts in urban, rural, and northern environments. We've made the decision to empower Indigenous-led organizations and Indigenous communities to take decisions about the people that they are trying to serve. This is not an Ottawa knows best approach. This is a partnership where we're putting money on the table and trusting our partners to develop programs that will support the people who are facing the greatest need. During my recent trip to Nunavut, this precise issue came up. I fully expect that some of the organizations that receive funding, some of the rights holders that receive funding will actually work to address these specific initiatives, but not because I as minister tell them to, but because they will have control over the decision-making process, and they have identified identified this need. And I think it's extremely important when we're dealing with Indigenous housing that we listen to the voices of Indigenous people and Indigenous communities if we're going to come up with the best policy outcomes.
Minister, advocates want a homeless plan by August 31st. Are you on track to do that right now?
I expect that we will, in advance of that deadline, be able to advance a suite of measures designed specifically to address the homelessness challenges. We, in fact, more broadly are working on a more comprehensive plan to address the housing crisis more broadly, which will absolutely include efforts to support Canadians facing intense needs, including those who are sleeping rough, people who are unhoused, people who are precariously housed. We have some more work to do to identify the appropriate policy track. One of the reasons that we have more work to do is Canada is not a monolithic entity. As I mentioned a moment ago, there are unique solutions that exist in different communities. When we have an opportunity to use different spaces in a community, the government of Nova Scotia recently partnered with the City of Halifax to identify a facility that they can move people into as they seek to move people out of encampments on the path towards a durable solution when it comes to housing. There may be other cities that don't have facilities available, so we have to identify what the local solutions are on a community-by-community basis if we're actually going to solve this problem. It has my full attention, and it will be part of a larger housing plan we release.
When you see those encampments, do you see that as a policy failure, that those encampments exist across Canada?
I think it's a generational moral failure that there are people who are sleeping without a roof over their head in a country as wealthy as Canada. I will not be able to say with a straight face that I have properly addressed the housing crisis if we still have to walk past people who are sleeping on the streets in Canada. We have to ask ourselves, not just as a government, but as a society, and this includes other levels of government as well, by the way, what kind of country do we want to live in? Do we think it's acceptable to have people who are not able to reach their full potential because they can't find a place to live? We know that the cost of not addressing homelessness reveals itself through more ER visits, which drive up costs, mental health challenges, which drive up systemic costs, more run-ins with the police and the justice system, which drive up social costs, and importantly, people can't reach their full economic potential and be fully participating in their communities and in society. We have to do everything we can to make sure the most vulnerable have a roof over their head. At the same time, we try to address the housing crisis for the broader population. Look, I am a bit late for cabinet, but merci, j'apprécie.
Écoutez, je voudrais prendre quelques instants pour revenir sur l'altercation entre Pierre Poilievre et une journaliste de la presse canadienne hier. Tout d'abord, je dois dire qu'il y a la couenne pas mal sensible. Écoutez, c'est notre job quand on est politicien de répondre aux questions qu'on nous pose. Il y en a des faciles, il y en a des plus difficiles. Hier, c'était une question facile qui a été adressée à Pierre Poilievre, c'est-à-dire pourquoi son parti a déposé un amendement qui a retiré des frais de licence pour l'équivalent d'à peu près 120 millions de dollars pour l'ensemble des radiodiffuseurs au Canada. C'est son parti qui a amené l'amendement, alors c'est assez facile à répondre. C'est inacceptable qu'un politicien, qu'un chef de parti s'en prenne comme ça au journalisme, aux journalistes en général. C'est notre job de répondre aux questions et c'est une attaque contre la démocratie. Quand on empêche les journalistes de faire leur travail, c'est inacceptable. So I just want to get back on the altercation between Pierre Poilievre yesterday and a journalist from Canadian Press. First of all, I want to say that he's pretty thin-skinned. It's our job when we're politicians to answer questions from journalists. We're accountable to the Canadian population, and it's the journalist's job to ask those questions. Some questions are difficult. Some questions are easy. Yesterday's question was pretty easy. He was just asked to explain why his party introduced an amendment to lift fees for Canadian broadcasters. It's a pretty easy question. It's his party that brought that forward. So yes, when you're a politician, you need to answer questions. And when you're attacking the press, when you're attacking our free press, you're also attacking democracy. It's unworthy of a leader.
Was the government have you picked up the phone and talked to anybody at Valley? Your government's puffing out their chest. They're really upset that they are not doing what you want them to do, but have you picked up the phone and called anyone?
We have spoken the day before the announcement, but really the CRTC will have to verify whether they are still meeting their requirements when it comes to news.
Was the government warned that these layoffs at Bell were coming?
No, the day before I had a quick conversation, but we learned it at the same time.
That sounds
like a warning, Minister. That sounds like a warning.
Est-ce que vous avez l'intention de sévir d'une façon ou d'une autre contre Bell?
Le CRTC va devoir vérifier si Bell, malgré les mises à pied, continue de remplir ses exigences en termes de bulletins de nouvelles.
Vous avez vérifié the day before, but what?
Probably a good question to ask Mr. Jolie, but she's going out there to make sure that that the relationship between Canada and the United States, particularly on the work in the Middle East, is what she's advancing. So I'm sure Minister Jolie is going to have more to say after a meeting with Secretary Blinken. Thanks.
Any thoughts on Belleville Mayor asking for support?
Sorry?
Any thoughts on the Belleville Mayor asking for support? I mean, they've seen a bit of a mental health crisis there.
We've been in regular contact with the mayor and the city manager. Health Canada is working with the province as well. We're also working with Minister Chibolo, and we'll have more updates soon.
Do you have a message to the people of Belleville right now?
We're here to support them in everything they need.
Can I ask you about the protest in front of Boissonnault Hospital?
Yes. Minister, what do you mean when you say you're reviewing the parameters of the Gaza program?
Well, we're looking at, I've said before that we are looking at the cap. I've said that we will be flexible. We're looking at the other parameters as well, including, through a humanitarian lens, given what's happening in Rafah, and seeing if it's really consonant with our obligations to approach getting family members of Canadians out as quickly as possible. I think we're faced with the really, really frustrating reality that we have not gotten people out under this program. And that's something that I'm really focused. If we can't get people out, the question I think we have to ask ourselves is, do we continue to entertain false hope? I think we have to provide hope, and we have to continue to try in the program. So I won't walk you through the suites of measures that we're looking at. I still have to complete them internally with my team. But we're reviewing the program as I've told people before that we would as the situation evolves, and given the emergencies that are getting even more so in Gaza and Rafah in particular, it's something that we need to move quickly on.
And has there been any progress in negotiations to get people out of Rafah? I know some French nationals made it out a few days ago. Has there been anything for these people who
there are consular cases and people getting their own out, permanent residents or nationals of the country. We have gotten some out in the course of January. We just haven't gotten people out, extended families that aren't Canadians, aren't permanent residents, but have family connections. We are unique, as far as I know, in the world as having put forth this program. So, as I've said before, perhaps there's some trepidation in doing this. I don't think it's justified, but clearly it's something that we need to do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Minister, and what is your take on the Conservatives saying that they would renegotiate the Ukraine free trade deal?
Well, let me say that first, I'm very pleased that the free trade agreement is being debated in the Senate. And when it comes to negotiations, there's two parties to a negotiation. Canada is one party, the Ukrainians are the other party. We negotiated this together mutually. This is a deal that the Ukrainians want. And I'm pleased that we are making progress on this. But I would also take a step back on something that's related. Canada and the Ukrainians have modernized and negotiated this new updated free trade deal. The Ukrainians are trying to align their policies better with the European Union, particularly around the environment. This free trade is going to help them do that. Yes, this free trade deal is going to help Canada and Ukrainian and help Canada certainly in the rebuilding of Ukraine and help all of those businesses and all of that work. There's no question about that. But what the Ukrainians also are counting on this free trade agreement to do is also to help them with that better alignment. So I would say to the Conservatives, why are they standing in the way? And why are they standing in the way of Ukraine? Ukraine negotiated this, and I'm very, very pleased that this debate is taking place today in the other place, and I hope that we will get it to passage. But I would also say that the Ukrainians are also taking this through their parliamentary process. Thank you.
A few questions on today's federal court ruling. So obviously the federal court is extremely critical of the government's generally inaction on appointments and the fact that it's remained about the same level of judicial vacancies. What is taking so long that years later we still have 75 vacancies when it should be mid-40s, the court says?
So I'm reviewing the decision. I've made my way through most of the decision at this point. What I just say to you and I say to Canadians is that under my watch personally, I've been in this role for about 6.5 months. I've appointed 64 judges so far, and there are more to come. And the average year under the Harper government, they appointed 65 per year. So on that metric alone, I'm working twice as fast as the Harper government. So that's the first point. Between myself and David Lametti last year, we appointed 100 judges. As a government since 2015, we've appointed 692 judges.
But it's not enough.
Those are all.
But it's not enough.
Those are all records in terms of the pace of judicial appointments. Can more be done? Yes, more can be done, and I'm working on that. This is my top priority as the Minister of Justice. This is the meat and potatoes part of my job. It's appointing judges of the highest caliber who also reflect the diversity of this country.
Why do we have so many vacancies, though? That many?
Well, I'll say to you also, it's something that's not reflected in the decision is the fact that we've added about 115 judicial positions since we formed government. Right? So you take the number of judges that existed when we formed government, we've added to that because we've heard requests from provinces and territories that they need more judicial positions that need to be put in place in those provinces. Also, when you look at the administration of justice around the country, you need to reflect on the fact that when you have court backlogs and court delays, those are contributed to, and the judgment reflects this, by the fact of underfunding and under-resourcing in terms of court staffing and the dollars that are being put in by the provinces. There are multiple inputs that factor into court delays and court backlogs. I'm responsible for part of that, which is appointing people. I'm doing it at a record pace. I'll continue to do more and do it faster.
Any sense of when that vacancy list will be down below 40 or even closer to zero?
I'm working to get it down as fast as possible.
Wait. Will you abide by this morning's decision?
Will you appeal it, Minister? Are you considering an appeal?
Yeah, I can let you down.
Yeah. So there have been warnings about an app that has been banned on Google, but is still available on the Apple Store. It's for teens that are dating. It's called the Wiz app, and it's been
really.
Been
I've not been dating for a long time. So trust me. I don't know the apps. My wife is probably watching anyway.
Well, it's an app that's used specifically aimed at minors, and it has been removed from the Google Store. It's still available on the App Store, and there was an alert from the Canadian Centre for Child Protection about this. And the question is your government aware of the app, and are you working with Apple to have it removed?
Briefly this morning I saw like a press report on that, but I must be honest, since we had cabinet just after, I've not been briefed on what it is, but what you were reporting and what it is of concern. Okay. So we'll have to see, what other jurisdictions may have done, what kind of regulatory power we have to make sure we protect our kids. Yeah, obviously that's our foremost priority. So we'll be looking into that and then probably have more to say in the coming days. Merci tout le monde. Merci.